Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to News You Can Use, a Pennsylvania Stands Up podcast about people, Pennsylvania, power, and politics. I'm your host, Pele IrgangLaden. I use he, him pronouns, and I am the program director at Pennsylvania Stands Up. Today on the show, we are very excited to have our special guest, Daulton from Lancaster Stands Up, part of the new member team. And they're going to be coming on in a little bit to tell us how people get involved in organizing. How do you actually get involved in Lancaster Stands Up and Pennsylvania Stands Up? But first, as always, we're going to look at recent news, see what has been going on out there with our Director of Narrative and Communications, Dr. Ashley Strange. Dr. Strange, what's the last body of water that you've been in?
Oh, the last body of water that I was in was, I don't even know the name of the river. Maybe it was the Kiski River. I was at a wedding and we went on a 4-hour float as part of the 4-day wedding excursion. And so we just hopped in a bunch of little inner tubes and floated down, imbibed some regular degular, whatever people were allowed to drink publicly on the Kiski. And yeah, I'm a fan of bodies of water generally.
I'm imagining people wearing like suits and dresses getting in inner tubes and then going tubing for multiple hours and then getting out and like the ceremony being at the end of it.
So we did talk about that while we were on the river because I was the officiant at the wedding. And so I, scooted and battled my way over with my little arms. And I was like, we could just do it right now. I could sign the paperwork when we get back to the house, but we could do it right now. And they were like, oh, what a great idea. Except that we paid all this money to have a wedding on dry ground. So
yeah,
it didn't happen.
Well, good. Glad you've gotten in some water in this hot labor summer.
I am still peeling, and that was like 3 weeks ago.
Cool. Well, speaking of peeling, we're still reeling about this PA budget situation. So what's going on?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so every summer is when Pennsylvania gets to ratify its budget. Earlier in the year, the governor puts out a document in a press conference that says, "Oh, this is how I would like to spend the money." There's an organization called the PA Budget and Policy Center that critiques that, and as they are friends of the pod, PA Budget and Policy Center. They say, well, the money exists. You could spend more on this. You could spend more on education. You could spend more on social services. And typically under Democratic governors, things like public schools are no-brainers. Even though there was a lawsuit, when was that, last year? That finally got resolved that said that Pennsylvania had the most unequal spending in the country on public schools. People be failing is what happened. As a homeschooler myself, in the bushwhack of Alaska, I know what it is to fail at schooling. So at some point in 2022, the then candidate for governor, Josh Shapiro, visited Lehigh Valley and said, you know what? Charter schools aren't so bad. And everyone went, what? Like, that's the first time that a Democratic governor, Tom Wolf, who was our governor for 8 years previous, never visited a charter school, famously. Pele, do you have any idea why a Democratic candidate for governor might suddenly be all about charter schools?
Oh, Dr. Strange, I invite you to come down the rabbit hole because there is a conspiracy happening and it involves a governor and a billionaire, and the only people that can stop it are us. So here's what's happening. As you said, in 2022, when Josh Shapiro was running for governor, there was a billionaire. If you've been listening to this pod, you know him. We hate him. Jeffrey Yass.
Enemy of the pod.
Enemy of the pod. Billionaire, fourth biggest political donor in the entire country. Just gave $3 million to Ron DeSantis and hates public education. So he was running ads against Josh Shapiro, right? Him and his organization, the Commonwealth Foundation, were running ads attacking Josh Shapiro, and Josh Shapiro met with Jeffrey Yass and made a deal. Said, "Listen, I will support your bill for school vouchers for private schools if you stop running ads against me." And Jeffrey Yass said, okay. And sure enough, those ads came down, and Josh Shapiro ran his election with very little opposition from the biggest donor to the Republican Party in Pennsylvania.
Richest man in Pennsylvania.
Richest man in Pennsylvania, worst haircut in Pennsylvania, and I'm going to say just like worst dude in Pennsylvania, just putting it out there. So Shapiro gets elected, and he does his budget address. And what do you know? One of his budget priorities is $100 million to go from public education to private school vouchers. Gasp. And so, he does this. The Senate Republicans are like, this is great. The House Republicans are like, this is great. And the House Democrats are like, what the heck is this? Like, Democrats run on public schools. Like, we care about public education. And so what has happened is that it has been the governor, a billionaire, and the Republicans versus the people and the House Democrats. And
really, versus the children of Pennsylvania.
It's true. This
is a real Newsies moment.
It's time to seize the day. Let's go. We got a banner to carry. And what happened is the Progressive Caucus, which is a newly formed caucus in the House Democrats, led by Rep. Elizabeth Fiedler, organized to say, if this voucher bill stays in the budget, we are going to veto the budget. And they flexed their power. And so Josh Shapiro, through this like weird technical thing, was like, okay, you know what? I'll cross it out before I sign it. It's called the line item veto. He said, I will cross out the voucher thing. We'll sign the budget. Republicans and Jeffrey Yass got very, very upset. They got so upset, they took their toys and they went home. They left Harrisburg, and they have not been back in Harrisburg in about a month. And what has happened in that month is a very good demonstration of how power works with the Republicans and with billionaires. Because what has happened since then is Jeffrey Yass, through his moneyed connection, published articles in the Wall Street Journal, in the Washington Post. He got a full page in the Philadelphia Inquirer to publish these op-eds saying Josh Shapiro's throwing kids under the bus. Like, we need to save our schools. Meanwhile, this guy lives in Lower Merion, one of the richest school districts in the entire country, and is a billionaire. So yeah, he's the one that should be speaking about what's best for children in Pennsylvania. And he was doing that, and what is now happening, in my understanding, is that the Senate is coming back, and because this billionaire has so much power, they're going to present two versions of the budget. One version that has the school vouchers, it has money for whole home repairs, it has money for other things that we care about, and be like, here, you can sign this bill, this budget with school vouchers, and you get all these other things that you want. Or they're going to send over another version of the budget which has none of those things, has no funding for any social programs, education programs, housing programs, and be like, here's a budget that covers, nothing. And so you can pick the budget that is nothing or the budget that has the things you want plus school vouchers. And, I know we're pretty far down the rabbit hole right now, but just to bring us back up, like, it is absolutely wild that a billionaire and his funded entities are so in control of the Senate Republicans and of the governor, it would seem, that they're going to be able to do this thing that is going to force Democrats to have to choose between a budget with nothing in it for our communities or a budget with some things for our communities and $100 million for private schools. It is a thing that can happen when you have this kind of power, where you have given these people have given Democrats a no-win situation. Like, I don't know what they're going to do, but I do know if there's some entity that's going to figure out how to do this, it's going to be the Progressive Caucus. But that is what is happening in the PA budget. A billionaire, a governor, and the Senate Republicans are colluding to defund public education and fund private education.
And as of this recording, late Wednesday night, late last night, Kim Ward, who is the president pro temp of the Senate Republicans, has to sign one of these documents. And she took off for vacation, has been off for a month. It's a month overdue. And with this budget not being signed, that means that federal dollars and state dollars do not make it into our schools, do not make it into our communities. Classes start in a couple of weeks. And so, like, we really need this funding. And so it is late last night, Kim Ward said that she would bring the Senate back at 1 p.m. today to vote on this so that she can sign it. So we don't know what's going to happen. Fingers crossed, it's all up in the air. But boy, howdy, do they really know how to keep people on their seats in late stage capitalism, I tell you. It's either go see the Barbie movie and figure out the twists there, or just watch the Senate decide if it's going to be called Barbie Land or Kendom.
Yeah, it just speaks to, we have gotten here through 30 or 40 years of really both political parties being okay with corporations and billionaires having an oversized influence in our politics. So now where you really have one billionaire that's able to do all of this like wild shit, and it's going to be up to a group of, progressive reps, progressive organizations, people-powered organizations to stop it. And, it just also shows the seriousness of the project that we have of building power over the next 5, 10, 20 years, so that we are the ones that are in charge, that we are the ones that are cutting deals with the governor and the Senate to get our priorities into the budget. So
hell yeah.
Yeah.
You just said that's all. That's clearly not all, Pele. You could have just a podcast on this, 100%. But that's all that we'll cover for today. We'll figure out what they're doing, and there will be more information later on today. Another thing that happened in the last couple of weeks is another billionaire, another enemy of the pod, Elon Musk. $236 billion is how much this man has. I for one would like my windows replaced at like less than 1% of that cost. But he was the CEO of Twitter, now is the CTO. Don't ask me what a CTO is. Central Twitter operative. I don't know. But renamed Twitter to X. That just went live on all of our devices. It's still called twitter.com. Tweets are now called posts. And so it's really just kind of his way of leaving his mark on something. And a lot of people, including ourselves, follow us on the threads at PA Stands Up. But a lot of people are kind of abandoning the platform, and the Threads doesn't have a lot of great stuff. And so we're obviously still on Twitter. Don't unfollow us there. As the comms director, I'm the person that counts how many followers we have every month. Please don't make that number go down. But I have thoughts on the name change as a non-binary person, as a member of the Alphabet Mafia. I know several people that I do not like, but they use different pronouns than when I met them, or they have had a name change. And it doesn't matter whether you like them or not. You don't say, well, we're just not going to call them that. No, like, the name is the name. So I am going to be referring to it as X and not dead naming X. It's probably one of those, like, when they go low, we go high things. But there are plenty of people about whom I have had a conversation, and I'll say, "Ugh, they're just such an asshole." And somebody goes, "Oh my God, no, they use she pronouns now." I'm like, "Oh God, she's such an asshole." So, like, there's plenty of ways to be an ally in this moment, and without dead naming, without moving. And I think it's a little bit of a lesson for the LGBT to see how we can truly stand together. That being said, also follow us on Threads because X is in a downward spiral.
Yeah, I didn't know that it was possible. Like one day I just looked at my phone and the bird had turned into an X and it was like, "Oh, Elon like went into my telephone, changed the app icon." And so yeah, now we have X. In my vision of what happened here, you had Mark Zuckerberg and Meta make Threads, being they're thinking, oh, we're going to make this this thing that is like X but is better, and then Elon Musk was like, all right, I'm going to make something that's like Threads, that's like Twitter, but better. And now I'm hoping that it just keeps going back and forth where they keep making iterations of their same thing over and over again until it just like dissolves into nothingness. But yeah, I will say that uh, I have found Threads to be not very interesting. So maybe and I also have to say, like, do I think Mark Zuckerberg is better than Elon Musk? Only at windsurfing do I think that. Like, I can't really think of what else I can actually say that's like, oh yeah, yeah, I want that billionaire to have all of my data instead of this billionaire to have all my data. So I'm with you. We should call it X. It's hard for me to not say gonna give it to you right after I say it, like quoting DMX every time. But
Ay, ay,
um,
ay, ay,
I
ay,
know,
ay,
I
ay,
know, I
ay,
know. It's
ay.
bad. It's bad.
Look, when you said that you weren't a fan of Threads, like I see it. You've been wearing the same hat and the same shorts for the past 11 years. Like clearly, you're not a fan of
Wow.
new Threads. Ay, 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 ay,
Yay,
ay.
yay, yay, yay. All right. Well, yeah, we're still on. We are still on X. Follow us on Threads. Is there anywhere else where people should follow us to get all of that sweet content?
Oh, hot dang! Let me tell you, we are on the Facebook and the Twitter and the TikTok and the X and the Threads and oh, you know what? We might get a Snapchat every now and again.
Yeah, subscribe to us on Netflix.
One
Anyway,
day.
one day. Anyway, thank you as always, Doctor Strange, for being here, bringing the news, and bringing the hot takes as always. All right, we'll see you later. So, moving on to our guest portion of the show. Like I said, we have Daulton here from Lancaster Stands Up. They are a part of the membership team, and we're really excited to hear about the work they've been doing. Daulton, how are you doing today?
Doing well. How are you?
I am good. I'm good. Thanks for being here. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved with organizing?
Oh yeah, of course. So in I think it was 2020, we had just moved into our apartment and obviously we had the pandemic that was just like, hey, we just announced, hey, this thing's happening, by the way. So we were sitting in our living room. We just moved in. There's boxes everywhere. It's completely pitch dark. And my roommate's playing Luigi's Mansion 3 on the Switch that we just got. And we're contemplating um we just had this very dystopian moment of like recognizing that there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be gone in the next couple years because of this thing and because of the way that the government is going to be handling this thing. Like we already had the capacity then to see that coming. And meanwhile I was working at a grocery store. Shout out to Giant for having some of the most predatory management.
We hate Giant. We hate Giant.
Oh yeah, me too. But I saw, as I was still working there, I didn't know a lot about politics particularly. Thankfully my roommate recommended me some like leftist readings and, political commentary on the internet that really helped shape, you know, my understanding of the world today as it is. But really it came down to experiencing what it was like to be an essential worker during COVID and recognizing that, oh, these people don't care. Like, they do not care about coronavirus. They do not care about people's lives. They do not care about the employees. They don't care about the customers. They just wanted to see the money rack in because we were the best store in Lancaster or whatever, we made like $1 million a week, I guess, across the store. So that's, we saw the profit, we didn't see any of that profit. We had about maybe a month or two of a shift differential for COVID. And that was pretty much the extent of our benefits for working like we did down there at that time period. And eventually I ended up working up to a management position and ended up quitting just because I couldn't handle the disconnect from humanity that they had up there at the top level.
Yeah, I feel
So
like sometimes there's this feeling of like, oh, I'll just like work my way up on the inside and then I'll change things, and then you get up a little bit and you're like, oh, this whole thing is rotten and terrible.
right, you got to tear it down from the roots.
That's right. So are you from Lancaster? How did you find Lancaster Stands Up?
Yeah, I was born in Lancaster County, been here my whole life. I found Lancaster Stands Up through the Roe v. Wade, when we had a rally for that. My coworker actually mentioned to me about a Twitter post, that like, hey, we're going to be down here at, I think it was Musser Park, I believe, or something like that. Either way, I was done work at 8. I walked all the way down, to see if I could catch the rally. Unfortunately, everyone was gone, but it still it still gave me that fire to like, yeah, I want to start doing things. I want to start helping out. I want to see what this organizing is all about. Because every political commentator I've been watching at the time was like, hey, we can give you knowledge, but you guys really have to get out there. Like, you guys really have to put in the work. Can't just sit and talk about things all the time.
Yeah,
So that's what we did.
absolutely. And it's those moments happen where there's hundreds of people in the streets. There's a moment where we gotta get up and do something about it. And a lot of times when that happens, when that moment ends, people go home. People go back to their regular lives. A lot of politics, in my experience, in the last 5 to 10 years, has been very reactive. Right, a bad thing happens, we go out in the streets and protest it. But you got involved with Lancaster Stands Up in like in a consistent way. And what was that like? What was it like then becoming a member of Lancaster Stands Up after that event?
Um, I mean, I'm definitely a little bit different of a person as far as I didn't really, not that I didn't like care, but I didn't necessarily like have a preference of where I was putting my energy into the organization. So I kind of just like let people reach out to me, and I kind of developed skills and like learned about how, the organization runs and how things work and like where we need help. And then eventually, after enough times of people, holding me accountable for some things, then I felt the need and the want to reach out to other people then and be like, hey, do you need help with this thing? So it kind of just slowly built, as like a passion, um, for a while. And, it's not that I'm doing this as like a full-time thing either, like I have a full-time job. I probably about 5 hours a week, maybe on average.
Yeah,
So it's not really like that crazy of a commitment, you know, when you really think about it.
it's actually really helpful to hear, because I think something I'm really interested in talking with you about is how people can get involved in this work in a sustainable way. I feel like the thing that we see is people get involved and they throw themselves into it and then they get burnt out and then they leave, or people don't want to get involved at all. But it sounds like you're doing it in a really sustainable way. So how do you think about bringing in new members, and how a new member can come into the organization in a positive and sustainable way?
Yeah, I think it really comes down to that. Like they always want to, corporations always want to talk about work-life balance or whatever, which is a bunch of bullshit. But, but like there is a sense of truth to some of that thinking of like if you can if you can deeply think about how like how much energy that you have in a day. Like if you can think of like how I don't even know how to word this. It's such a complicated thing for me. But it's like if you feel like you're tired, like you know you're tired. Um, but if you can predict that you're going to be tired, it makes you less tired. So you can take that time to rest when you know like you can predict that, oh, if I do this, I might not have enough energy to do this thing later. Um, so I think it's important of like learning when to take advantage of your like energy and then when also you need to take a little bit of time. And I know a lot of people, I'm a very fortunate in my situation, and the stability in my life. I know a lot of people don't have or share that stability in their lives. So that is a big part of it too. I know people are struggling out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, one thing about having a an organization with lots of members having lots of different roles, it means that you can step back when you need to, and the work will continue, the organization will continue, and it allows people to have those boundaries to take care of themselves when they need to. Um, and yeah,
Yeah.
I hear you. My level up is absolutely being able to predict when I will be tired, and organize my life in that way. I want to ask you. So you're a part of the membership team at Lancaster Stands Up, and um, I know that just last week there, or maybe even earlier this week, there was like a new member orientation event that happened. Could you tell me a little bit about that and how what new member orientation looks like?
Yeah, that is exactly how I actually got involved, like with individual teams. They had held a meeting that was basically like what we do there is we're just kind of like, hey, this is what Lancaster Stands Up is. We explain PA Stands Up. We kind of go into a little bit of like the inclusionary populism talk, of like, hey, these billionaires like Jeff, we're hearing here. They're that 1% that we're trying to, get to do what we want, or take them down. And, we really like to emphasize in those meetings that like we need to, as a society, come together and punch up to those 1% and not across, metaphorically, of course.
Right, right. In a nonviolent, politically powerful, and
Yes,
disciplined
yes,
way. Yeah,
yes.
yeah. It's not left versus right; it's top versus bottom. And that, I mean, that's really cool. And what I love about it, this is just my understanding, I haven't been to one of these meetings, is that it's like maybe 1 or 2 hours. It's like, the a lot of times people see things and they're like, that's cool, but I don't know how to get involved. I don't know if I have time to get involved. But you all have built this structure that allows people to come to this thing that's maybe only 1 or 2 hours, and then understand what's going on and how they can get involved. And I'm wondering if you've seen like the impact of that, if it feels like more members are coming, more people are becoming members, different kinds of people than have been members before. Um, yeah, what do you think about that?
Well, I fully 100% believe that people are excited to do this kind of work. I think people are supercharged to like they see, we're at a point in that late stage capitalism where like you can't go a single day without seeing some fucked up shit.
Yep.
Most of the time it's like four things in your day where you're like, wow, that is just I can't comprehend that, you know? So I think people are really looking for a sense of purpose, in their lives. I mean, me included on that. That's part of the reason why I do organizing is for a feeling of purpose in my life. I feel like I'm actually doing something meaningful, and jobs just don't give that to you. Like they'll say whatever they'll try their best to make pretend like they care about you, but like there has been nothing there's been no other kind of work that I've done in my life that has felt as good as this work. And I think people are really excited about it. And each night that I've had so far with the onboarding meetings, we've had some really nice conversations, and people share their struggles, and and we talk about it, like yeah, like my coworker just went through the same thing. Like, isn't that crazy? Like, maybe we should, we bounce ideas off of each other, and then eventually, we're calling reps or doing whatever.
Yeah. The other thing that just sounds really powerful is the community aspect of it, right? So many
Mhm.
people hear about all the fucked up things happening, have their own struggles in their own life, and deal with that mostly alone, right? Whether it's analyzing the news and understanding what's happening, or like you said, struggles at work, struggles with healthcare, struggles with housing, and we live in a society where we are told that those things are a personal failure of ours and that we should be ashamed of that. And it's places like Lancaster Stands Up where people can share their stories and hear, oh, I'm not alone. I'm not the only one struggling with this. Someone else who is, in my community is also struggling with the same thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's very powerful. We're coming to the end of our time here, Daulton. I want to ask, what is your favorite part of Lancaster Stands Up? If you think about, like, if you're talking to someone about why they should be involved, why it's a good experience to show up at Lancaster Stands Up, what comes to mind?
Um, I think my favorite piece of Lancaster Stands Up and PA Stands Up as a whole is it's so real. It's not it's not this like if you get emails from the DNC, it's just like it makes you want to throw up, you know? But this kind of grassroots organizing, just like Jonathan Smucker said at our picnic, like the whole country is looking at this kind of stuff, and they're getting excited. And this is real. This isn't just some like, oh hey, like, donate here and maybe we'll give you a little bit of health care. Like this is like basically a revolution, I feel. Just nicely, I guess, nice revolution, not like the French.
Not
No
like the
offense to the
French, but
French.
yeah, I mean, we could. It'll be a fiery revolution, at least emotionally. We won't
Yeah,
say
yeah.
anything else beyond
Emotionally on fire.
that. That's awesome. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. And yeah, I mean, we maybe will someday, but right now we're not handing out tote bags, right? It's not like donate, get a sticker, and now the revolution has happened. We're talking about building real power, real long lasting power in our communities.
Right,
Um,
right. We're trying to topple down the century of self. It's not an easy thing to do.
that's it. That's it. Um,
Edward did his job, so we got to reverse it.
that's right. So thank you so much for joining us, Daulton. It's been a pleasure. Are there, before you go, is there anything coming up in Lancaster Stands Up, that you want to plug? Any way that people who are listening that might live in Lancaster can get involved?
Well, we are at the end of our advocacy for the Fairness Act, but you can still write LTEs, call your legislator, specifically Ryan Allman and um, Scott Martin,
Yeah, Scott
right?
Martin.
Yes.
Yep.
But in the Fairness Act, we're trying to, make sure that those gender identity rights are set in stone for Pennsylvania, not just federally. And also next week, next Tuesday, if you are interested, I will be hosting one of those onboarding meetings, the 8th at 7 p.m., I believe.
Awesome. That is so cool. And this is going to go up the night we're recording it. So it's Thursday, August 3rd as we're recording this. And next Tuesday, August 8th, there is a new member onboarding. Anyone that wants to get involved in Lancaster Stands Up can go there. And all of our events will be on our Mobilize, the software we use to publicize events, and it'll be in the show notes. So Daulton, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for sharing about the awesome work happening with Lancaster Stands Up.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that is the end of our show. If you enjoy our show, please follow us, share this episode with your friends, share it with your enemies, and be sure to come back in a couple of weeks where we are going to talk to some parents in our organization to talk about the joys and challenges of being a parent and organizing as school is getting started. Until then, I'm your host, Pele IrgangLaden, and don't forget, Pennsylvania is for all of us. We'll see you in the streets.